Alright, that's a good weld. I see you're finally getting the hang of it. Mind passing me the torch now? Oi, watch it, man. I don't want to spend another hour chasing the bloody thing just because you keep tossing stuff around like a fool. Sorry. I guess I just can't get used to this no-gravity business here. Things shouldn't just float in the air when I let go of them. Nah, there is some grav here, otherwise that blowtorch would be flying into the stars now. If you really want to walk in zero-G, you should join me on the next mining run to the belt. Lots of creds to be made there. I'll pass. I'm already spending most of my days here barely holding onto my stomach. Haven't ate a decent meal in days. Come to think of it, why the hell is Council even trying to colonize this rock? I thought there would at least be some riches down beneath the surface, but from what I heard from geological teams, there's not even that. Just an empty barren rock. Well, maybe old Stoneface wants to give it to these separatists. As a prison, of course. That actually sounds like something our dear Prime Minister would do, but don't you think it's a bit too close to home? Maybe he's all for that keep your enemies closer thing, but in all seriousness, I'd say they have us building up this colony simply to prove that we can. Boss said that once we're done with basic infrastructure and reactors, they're going to drop a few billion walk droids here and use them to build up the rest of the colony. Domes, ecologies, regular colony stuff. Job-wise, I'd say they're going to turn it into a lab or maybe huge training camp for the army, since you could get triggers to learn the space ropes here. Or hell, maybe they're going to use it to mine that gas giant right above us. There's enough hydrogen there to fill all refineries back home. And aside from that, I expect it's going to be yet another adaptation experiment. Meaning? I keep forgetting this is your first time away from Ortus. My bet is they're going to drop a few billion people here and watch how they adapt to environment. Blokes from Biosec have been doing it for years, ever since we first dropped on Curacao. Turns out human bodies have a way of making the best out of any given situation. Take guys born on Redamon for example. They have a bit lower gravity than Ortus, so they're taller than average, but because their star is much brighter, not to mention Redamon is closer to it than Ortus is, they have smaller, less light-sensitive eyes. And they're not as pale as we are. Wasn't obvious in the first generation, course, but now with third one reaching work age, you can tell them apart just by their looks. All guys on Arvo, several decades under 2 stars in the sky, and their kids are now much darker than we are. Not to mention their heads are all messed up from all the tidal forces of the Red Star. Poor guys got so used to 2 overlapping gravity wells they're completely lost in space, even more than you are. Come to think of it, yeah, now that you mention it, I remember working with some Kithri-run transport company back home. They were all regular ones, black with those red and blue glowing bits, but then there was a few of them that looked more yellow. Must have been from Arvo, that lot. Aye, sounds about right. That's the point here. You spend a few years in a new place, your body begins to adapt, and then eggheads can figure out just what exactly changed, and use it in all those gene clinics across the land. Everyone wins. Still, I kinda feel bad about being just an experiment to these guys. Oh come on, don't give me that separatist nonsense. Everything's an experiment to a certain degree. And besides, just look at results. My grandpa kicked the bucket when he was, what, 73? I was 5 back then. Today, I'm 30 years older than he was when he died, and I can do a handstand. Well, anyone could do a handstand here, but you know what I'm saying. All because a bunch of nerds sat down and experimented. Can't disagree with that, but what if they're conducting some unethical research behind the scenes? And we can only hope we're not going to be lab rats in this case. And besides, the council made all research facilities transparent just to prevent something like that. But let's continue this in the canteen, okay? Just one last weld and here we are, the very first sealed habitat dome on planet Rheya, finished thanks to our invaluable contribution. Grab that chisel and let's scratch our names into this plate. No atmosphere means that they will be here even in a million years. And hey, if the nerds will science hard enough, maybe we'll be around as well. Salutations, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Second Chance. And, for the first time in many years, this welcome is a peaceful one. Our current wars are over, our borders are finally safe, and we even managed to remove some potentially dangerous galactic wildlife from our space. So now, after long delay, Commonwealth may return to its peacetime policies of expansion and development. As you can see, our fleet is currently sifting through the debris field left after our battle against crystalline entities, but once they're done with that, it will finally be time for them to return home for a well-deserved rest. And, in the meantime, our best explorers, Commander Kuo and his crew, will remain in this system trying to uncover its secrets and, hopefully, ensure that this whole operation will bring us some benefits. And there is potential here for just that, because, as you can see now, researching the remains of these living crystals is giving us some interesting ideas, ones that we may soon use to improve our ships. Plus, who knows, we may find other interesting things in this system, time will tell. But, despite our newfound peace, the galaxy remains just as unstable and violent as ever, as Commonwealth is currently completely surrounded by nations that are at war with each other. To our south, east and west, the ally-led Federation is busy fighting Yannari's Zrak and Yadron coalition, in order to prevent them from consolidating power and becoming even more dangerous than they are right now. Fortunately, as you can see here, it appears that the war goes completely in favor of our friends, and no wonder considering that we decimated Yannari and their allies during our last war with them, and they had no chance to rebuild since then. Also, crocodile-like slavers and their flowery religious comrades are completely outnumbered in this war, so it's probably only a matter of time before they're defeated here. Also, you might have noticed that I haven't mentioned Kingdom of Yadra, and the reason for that is very simple. They are, to put it bluntly, completely devastated at this point. Proud as they are, the kingdom suffered so many defeats and setbacks in recent years, against us, against the Mind and against the Zhir, that by now their remaining planets are a complete disorganized mess, with nobles fighting for control of scraps of land, while Imperial government barely holds to any actual power. So, as was said, Yannari defeat here is almost certain. Only question that remains, however, is what the Federation will do with their victory. When they defeated Yannari last time, they demanded from them to abolish slavery, but, as we know, that didn't really work. We will have to see if Alius and Vrithens and the rest of the Federation learned something from their past lessons. Otherwise, they're going to fight the Yannari forever. But, as you can also see, that war is not the only one the Entente is embroiled in. There is another conflict further in the west, as one of the smaller galactic kingdoms decided to try their luck and attack the Fenhalo Concordat, the only openly religious nation that tolerates us. Now, under normal circumstances that small kingdom would have posed no threat to the Entente, but there is a bit of an issue. They are backed by Thrakus families, the cannibalistic space elves, who are one of the major powers on galactic scene. For all their politeness and good manners, Thrakus proved time and again that they are no strangers to war, something that may complicate things for the Federation. We'll have to see how the situation develops. We may be on decent terms with Thrakus, for reasons that we still don't really understand, but we certainly do not want them to win this war, especially since we're on far better terms with the Alir and the rest of their Federation. And then, there is of course the war to our north, where Xenak Forge and Utkavonga State are trying, and failing, to contain the advance of Fafsim Dominion. There is, however, a small blessing there for our mushroom friends and their robotic allies, namely the Dis Berserkers, who now style themselves as Dis Ravagers for some reason. In recent months, they have declared war on one of the smaller nations in the north, the Tizhnig, but because of established alliances, Fafsim Dominion was also dragged into this conflict, and because they're practically surrounded by the Dis, they will probably want to wrap up their war against the Forge as quickly as possible and race back home to protect it. But all these wars are nothing compared to the one that we had just learned about. In late February 2278, the enigmatic Eternal Empire declared war against Dis Ravagers. Two most powerful nations in this galaxy are now going to fight each other, but while there was at least some semblance of rules in other conflicts up to this point, this one is going to be a total war. Both Empire and Ravagers are bent on exterminating all alien life from the galaxy. They do not take prisoners and they do not assimilate those they conquer. If a planet is captured by one of them, they will exterminate everyone on the surface without mercy. So, no matter how this conflict will go, one thing is sure. The casualties will be in tens or even hundreds of billions. The rest of the galaxy can only hope that these two mad countries will slaughter each other to the brink of extinction, but we must remain cautious. When two giants like these collide, one of them may end up becoming even more powerful than before, and that will probably be the end for us all. But for us, these matters are distant, for now at least. Instead, with Commonwealth once again switching to peacetime economy, the Council began a second wave of colonization projects. Before, our colonization efforts were mostly focused on expanding our territory, but now, with most of galactic real estate gone, we may focus on developing our space, and with new advances in terraforming technology, our Shaper teams are doing just that. As we have learned previously, one of their most recent projects was planet Karanlik 3, now colonized and renamed as Karanlik Val, Val meaning haven in Utkavonga language. As you can see, after our terraforming crews did their job and prepared the planet for colonization, the Utkavonga from Sinia took over, and by now they're quite well established on the surface, preparing it for constant stream of refugees that arrives daily through our northern border, though even that may not be enough to house all the Utkavonga should their nation fall to the Dominion. Still, it's the best we can do at this point, and besides, it's not the only oceanic planet the Council is planning to colonize in upcoming years. Also, we should probably take a look at our newest protectorate, the bloodied, battered remnants of Yuri Galactic Commonwealth. As you can see, after losing most of their territory to Ynnari and Thadrakis, who annoyingly share the same color on the map, the Yuri are now left with just a single habitable planet, one that they colonized around 2 decades ago. Unfortunately, that means that said planet is not well developed. If anything, the Yuri rely mostly on scavenging economy, using gigantic sand crawlers to sift through endless desert that covers the surface of this world, in search of something valuable or edible. They don't even have hydroponic farming established on the surface, instead using agricultural methods from half a millennium ago, which means that, just like with Utkavonga some time ago, we may soon be forced to save them from starvation. Aside from that, this outdated infrastructure, and to put it bluntly primitive living conditions, means that most of the Yuri on the surface are not exactly happy with their current predicament, and their government has its hands, well, tentacles full trying to suppress the riots. Then again, it is understandable. As you can see, the majority of the remaining Yuri are not walkers, but soldiers. Their world is basically a slum for civilians, but there is surprisingly well-developed military infrastructure, with soldiers organized into various warrior houses and other military organizations focused on training elite troops to defend Yuri race from another invasion. Again, understandable given their current situation, but when population has this large percentage of warriors and soldiers, there's going to be issues. Warriors do not build, they do not sow, they fight or train themselves for future fights, which means that someone has to build and sow for them, or the warriors will just starve to death before their first battle. So, as their new protectors, we may be forced to reorganize Yuri society into something a bit more self-sufficient, or perhaps we could leave it as it is and use it to our own benefit. If the Yuri really want to fight so much, we could just let them do it and use them as a core for our armies. We can afford sending them food from Malika, since we still have an enormous surplus after all. Of course, for now that is all purely theoretical. Before we fully integrate them into our society, the Yuri still have a separate government, not to mention that, after all the problems their migrants gave us on Falca Boss, they, just like Carthemas, still don't have voting rights. But once we fully integrate them, who knows, they may become the backbone of our ground forces. Odd, floating backbone, with tentacles. They will fit in Branitsky's army perfectly. That's still a long way off though. In the meantime, we received news from the Intent, and, just as we feared, their peaceful and kind nature had once again caused them to go easy on the Ynnari and the Zrakan. The Federation won the war, their fleets had complete control over enemy space, and their forces occupied several of their planets. But, once again, instead of breaking Ynnari and Zrakan power, they simply demanded them to free their slaves, despite the fact that it didn't work last time they asked. Perhaps the Intent simply wanted to end this war as quickly as possible and focus on Thadrakis' families, but still it feels like they're going easy on our enemies. Although, in all honesty, we also left Ynnari alone after last war, so we can't really complain too loud. Regardless, it feels like all recent wars were just completely inconclusive. Millions or billions of people on all sides die, and nothing changes. Perhaps once we're done with our current wave of colonization, we should step in once again and finally fix some things. Otherwise, the galaxy is going to repeat the same conflicts forever and ever. Before that happens though, we have to finish our current civilian projects, and as you probably realized by now, the newest one is somewhat special, because for the first time since we left Ortus, we're actually going to colonize a planet within our very own home system, Rheya. Now, Rheya is special because, unlike other worlds we settled so far, it is basically just a barren rock, similar to countless other empty planets that float in the void. However, a few decades ago our rangers have actually deemed it as potentially habitable, mostly because their planet is covered in cryogazers, which launch enough chemicals into the air that, with some preparations, we could actually use them to develop atmosphere on this world. It's still practically non-existent, but when paired with our technological advances, mostly gained from construction of habitat stations, it is enough to develop a small colony. Although it is actually more work than initially seems, because, in this case, we cannot just drop a colony ship there and expect our people to just get to work. Because the surface of Rheya is deadly to almost all living creatures, we will first have to develop infrastructure, various domes, exo-barracks and farms and countless other facilities that will, slowly, make this world more habitable. But before that, someone will actually have to build all that infrastructure, which is why the Council decided to use droids as first wave of workers here. Which means that Rheya is our very first autonomous colony, yet another proof of our ingenuity and knowledge. And, in time, organic races will surely settle on this world, because we're going to offer some very generous incentives for them to do so. See, Rheya may seem a weird choice for a colony, it lacks natural riches and it's extremely dangerous to live on, but, on the other hand, it is a prime place for some research facilities, since we have some very specific conditions on the surface, as well as a good trading port, since it's right between Ortus and wormhole stations that connect our capital with the rest of the Commonwealth. But, finally, the main reason for colonizing Rheya, aside from proving that we can, is that it's going to serve as a staging ground for another, even more ambitious project, one that may soon define the very way of life for our people. Alright, Ishi, the Council is listening. Fill us in. Very well, Chancellor. As you all know, ever since we encountered both Dis and the Empire, we've been trying to gather intel on them. Problem is that with both of these nations being as hostile to outsiders as they are, sending even unmanned recon probes into their territory is practically impossible. We tried to gather data by remote listening posts, which are now moved into former Yadron territory, but unfortunately Galactic core creates so much interference that we cannot get any kind of useful intel from them. As for the Dis, we established a few observation stations in Ahadi and Utkavongo space, so we have a rough estimate of their territory and power, but until recently we had absolutely no data about the Empire. However, I managed to negotiate access to Fethgran information. Not much, but at the very least we can monitor movement of large masses as well as energy spikes, which gives us a bit of insight into their military operations. And let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, the war between them is greater and more devastating than anything we've seen in our history. Every time their fleets meet each other, they output energy that would be enough to turn an entire planet into dust. And what's worse, their conflict doesn't look like it's slowing down despite apocalyptic levels of destruction. Understood. However, those are just working theories based on very limited data, right? Well, in that case we should probably stop pouring resources into our current inefficient project and focus on developing some new means of monitoring these two empires. Agreed. In fact, I've been talking with heads of engineering and theoretical science divisions, and they presented several very interesting plans to solve that issue. However, at this time I can't really disclose any details. Ishi, I thought we agreed that there should be a full transparency regarding our research project. We do not want another scandal. I'm very well aware of our agreement, Madam Chancellor, but the reason why I can't give you any details is very simple. These projects are simply in too early stages of development to treat them as anything more than distant plans. Not to mention that, if Dr. Poniewski and Professor Lachinov are correct, enacting their plans would be far too cost-prohibitive at this point. But rest assured, once we have something solid, it will be presented to the Council without delay. Glad to hear it. Now then, if that's out of our way, we can move on to the next topic, your mission to Falca Boss. How's the assimilation effort going? Better than expected, in all honesty. I managed to negotiate several deals with more stubborn nobility, but all credit should really go to General Aspinaka. I had some doubts over his theatrical methods, but over the last few years he managed to sway population to his side almost completely. Hell, he even convinced hundreds of millions of Yadran people to help us with colonization of Rheya. Rheya? And what business would Cathemas have there? They want to prove themselves, of course. Aspinaka realized that, after all these wars, most of Yadran nobility was either displaced or dead, which left countless serfs completely directionless. And, because they are natural followers, they gathered around Aspinaka, who proposed this colonization effort after Bioshock operatives told him that Katheman biology makes them best suited to life on such barren worlds. So not only they could help us establish an operational colony there, they could also provide invaluable support during second phase of Project Rheya. I can see now why High Command promoted him despite his questionable results on military exams. He makes a surprisingly good counter to Branitsky's violent methods. But speaking of General Branitsky, have you contacted him about his recent proposition? Yes, and it's even more insane than I expected. But if it works out, we may remove one of the greatest threats to humanity from the galaxy. I'd say it's worth a bit of madness, but I'm not so sure about projected casualties if even a single thing goes wrong. And while we keep colonizing and terraforming planets, our researchers continue to increase our understanding of the universe. In fact, we just received a very interesting message from Commander Kuo and his crew. Apparently, the pulsar in Kazu system spins around its axis in a very regular manner, meaning that we can use its light pulses as an extremely precise stellar clock. But far more importantly, thanks to researching this pulsar, Kuo and his crew managed to uncover a previously unknown element called neutronium, which is one of the most resilient materials known to man. But it is also flexible enough that it can be fashioned into whatever we want, which immediately made us realize that we could use it to greatly improve armor of our warships. The problem is, it appears that this neutronium is only found around certain pulsars, and we only have single one of them within our borders, so we probably won't be able to use it on a truly massive scale. Still, an opportunity like that is too valuable to pass up, and we're going to establish extraction facility in Kazoo as soon as possible, and send neutronium back home. First to fully research it, and then to find the most efficient use for it. And so we continued our expansion, but as we finalized Rheya's urbanization, we received even more disturbing news from the north. Despite its valiant efforts, Xenak Forge and their Utkavongo allies have been defeated by the Fafsim Dominion. All frontier stations that belong to both these states have been dismantled, and Xenak Home System has been completely annexed. But, to our surprise, the Dominion actually decided to keep the Forge alive, and instead of wiping them out, they vassalized them. So, at the very least, the only AI civilization in the galaxy will survive, but, unfortunately, this is not the end of bad news for them. For one, according to terms of their peace treaty, all Xenak automatons within their home system are going to be dismantled, which effectively kills them, since their new masters apparently have no need for them. Even more troubling is the fact that Fafsim have also gained access to Xenak mainframe, meaning that they now could access all the secrets of these enigmatic robots. Granted, it's probably going to take them a while to actually decode all that data, plus of course Xenaks themselves will probably try to prevent it, but from now on we must add the Dominion to the ever-growing list of potential threats, since we have no idea just what knowledge the Forge possessed before their fall. Sadly though, this is not the end of bad news for the Xenak themselves. Some of them may have survived, though we do not exactly know how they will operate without their mainframe, but now, as vassals of the Fafsim, they have immediately been dragged into their war against Dis Ravagers, who, until now, have never lost any war. So, for the remnants of Xenak Forge, it means that they just switch one threat to their existence for another one, and now they even have to fight side by side with Dominion that is actively killing them as we speak. We haven't really learned much about these Xenak automatons, so we do not know if their programming allows for any emotions, but for their sake, it would be best if it didn't. Back to our new inventions. After we established that extraction facility in Kazoo system, the Council had to decide how and where to use our newly acquired neutronium. As for now, we already know that we can use a thin layer of it to strengthen armor of our warships, but as for where, there was a bit of deliberation because our single pulsar only provides enough of it for a single facility, and that, as you might expect, caused a bit of an issue. Basically, any planet that will receive shipments of neutronium is going to become Commonwealth's main shipbuilding world, because vessels built there will be simply better than those constructed elsewhere. Because of that, representatives of nearly all planets fought in the Council to secure that contract, as it will provide an extremely large boost to local economy. Thing is, the Council was, from the very beginning, set on developing this facility on Curaçao. It already has some shipbuilding facilities in place, so repurposing them would be relatively cheap, and it is already our main industrial world, and we just want to specialize it even more. All that means that, while representatives from Curaçao are happy, the rest of our colonies are not, and that puts the Innovation Party in a position where they have to placate almost entire Commonwealth just to get this project, that will benefit us all in the end mind, off the ground. But even that is not the end of our political issues. See, a few years ago we uncovered another new compound called lithuric gas, which can be used as fuel for our deflector shield reactors and greatly increase their efficiency. But it's the same problem as with neutronium. We have access to only limited quantities of it, so we can only build a single facility, and optimally we also want to build it on Curaçao spaceport to maximize our gains and build the best ships possible. But that will also cause bickering in the Council, so, for now at least, we must put that particular development on hold, at least until we can placate people from other planets to follow our plan. Then again, maybe some caution would be good in this situation. After all, we're giving people of Curaçao means to create most powerful warships within the Commonwealth. We should best make sure that they will never get any funny ideas about using them against the rest of our nation. Now, speaking about politics, time for some more bad news. After barely surviving their previous conflict, our last defensive allies, the Utkavongo Sovereign Stars, decided to look for safety in numbers and join the Xier Federation. Now, we remain on good terms with them, but their new allegiance means that they were forced to abandon the defensive pact they had with us, which means that we no longer have any allies left in the galaxy. There are still some non-aligned states in the west, for example Federal Union, but they're either too far away or too opposed to our ideology to commit to an alliance. Fortunately, we still are the most powerful nation in the southern part of the galaxy, even more powerful than Thrakas, so it's not like we're going to be picked apart the moment we're alone, not to mention that we are on very good terms with both federations and Thrakas themselves. Still, with families, Dis and Empire on the rise, we may soon find ourselves very much outnumbered, so we may soon be forced to align ourselves with one of our neighboring federations, if only to protect ourselves against bloodthirsty northern superpowers. As for the Utkavongo, their decision to join another alliance was a bit of a dick move, especially since we saved them from being eaten alive by the Mind, but then again it is understandable, so we're not going to hold it against them, especially since we get a bit of a consolation prize. Let me ask you this. What do you think is the largest Utkavongo nation in the galaxy? It's the Commonwealth. That's right, at this point more Utkas live within our space than within their own motherland, and more of them still migrate to our planet every day. So, the Xier Federation may have Utkavongo government, but we have their people. I think it's obvious who benefits more from that deal. Keeping with theme of problems, you may remember a planet called Bardagan Prime, located right next to former Yadran colony of Katanab. It is a cold oceanic planet that is quite well suited to being our next colony destination, and it is also inhabited by a pre-sentient race called Vunokon, who, for all we know, have potential to become absolute geniuses should we ever decide to uplift them like we did with the Kithri. Except not anymore. As our ranger teams moved to Bardagan once again to find some decent spot for a colony, they realized that Vunokon are gone, and not just from the local area, but completely gone from the entire planet. An expedition was mounted to figure out what the hell has happened, and, in the far south, they found several frozen remains of this once numerous race. Turns out, when we explored this planet for the first time, our rangers accidentally brought with them a strand of microbes that turn out to be extremely dangerous to most life forms on this planet, and completely deadly to the Vunokon themselves. And because we were busy with our wars, and Bardagan is a frontier system, we failed to notice that until it was too late to do anything for them. So, we managed to cause an accidental extinction of an intelligent race, something that will surely not go well with our population, but at the very least it means that we can now terraform this planet without fear of ruining the ecosystem, because we already messed it up. Still, it's a real shame that we lost those pre-sentients, because their intelligence would surely make them a welcome addition to the ranks of Commonwealth scholars. Still, accidental genocide or not, our second wave of expansion continues, and finally, after years of researching it from orbit and decades of border conflicts between us, Ynnari and Yadrans, citizens of the Commonwealth settled on planet Bera 2, now renamed Varuna. It is a very large, warm, oceanic planet, but despite its size, we're going to have to work extra hard to establish any sizable presence on the surface, because this world is one of the more untamed ones among those we found in the void. Most of the oceans are covered from top to bottom in thick forest of toxic kelp. One island houses a massive active volcano that could completely ruin everything for us here, and most other islands are inhabited by extremely dangerous wildlife that makes even tigers from Redamon look peaceful in comparison. But it's nothing our technology can't deal with in time, and until that happens we can simply focus on developing other relatively safe areas. All of this will be worth it though, because, as you remember, Varuna is home to a very interesting anomaly. Schools of psionically active fish that roam the ocean and, for all we can tell, communicate between each other using the very same brainwaves that our own Asian pyramid emanates. And now, once we have a presence on the planet, we can get to work on researching them and figure out just how it is possible for them to have this ability and how they developed it. More than that though, aside from studying psionic fish, we can also start hunting the other, more regular ones, and because almost all of our other planets are either dry or frozen, which means they don't really have any large bodies of water, building several fishing ports on the surface of Varuna will greatly diversify our food supply. Not to mention that, since fish are rare in the Commonwealth, they will surely become an expensive luxury. Still, after decades of eating mushrooms, bison steaks and recently slugs, adding some fish to the menu will surely be a welcome change for our citizens.
Research concluded.
In the meantime, back home, second phase of Project Rheya has just been finished. Between our worker droids, our astromasons and Yadrans who moved to Rheya, Commonwealth has just finished construction of yet another habitat station above gas giant Molinier. Except, unlike 3 solar stations we built before, this one is a fully developed one and over twice as large as those solar plants, 40 kilometers wide and 36 kilometers tall. It can house up to 12 billion people, and because we used all our experience we gained from first 3 stations, it is perfectly habitable for any and all forms of life. And, perhaps most importantly, we can specialize those stations in any way we want. We could turn them into massive spaceborne farms, factories, labs, or even training and recruiting grounds for the military. Or we could just leave them without specialization and just let our people develop them as they see fit. For this first one, we're going to turn it into a research facility, since it's kind of our thing, but with next ones we'll develop them depending on the needs of the nation. Several industrial ones would surely help us skyrocket our economy, for example. Still, some of our scholars from Bioshock Division have mentioned that we should be careful with all those specializations of our colonies, because if we go too far, we may accidentally create a rift in our society. It can already be seen to a certain degree. For example, people born on Curaçao are mostly working in forges and factories, since that's the way their homeworld functions. People from Arvo gravitate towards becoming delvers, since it's a mining world, and endless farms of Malika create tenders. And while everyone in Commonwealth can always pack their belongings and leave for other worlds if they're not satisfied with their life, it all starts to look dangerously like a caste system based on place of birth. Certainly not something we want to promote in the Commonwealth. So, we'll have to keep this issue in mind, but in the meantime our new habitat, named Tessa Station in honor of our former Chancellor who started Project Starhome, is open for business. Maybe, in time, the majority of our people will no longer need to rely on planets. Perhaps we're destined to become a truly void-born species. Only stars know what will develop next. Well, stars and our scholars, of course. See, once Council unveiled Tessa Station, our population once again went into a frenzy of new ideas. And no wonder, seeing just how far humanity went in less than a century is truly an inspiring sight. We might have started off as refugees and blundering, inexperienced explorers, but today we stand proudly as the most advanced nation in the galaxy. A place where nearly all other species want to live in, simply because we offer the best standard of life, from consummate technologies to the simple fact that our knowledge of medicine and DNA engineering can prolong lives of our citizens by 4 or 5 decades. And, as if in recognition of all our united efforts, our people once again flooded the Council with new ideas on how to improve that Commonwealth of ours. And again, choosing only one from these projects was a difficult decision, but in the end the Innovation Party accepted a proposition made jointly by scholars from engineering and theoretical divisions. They argued that, since we already have plenty of experience in construction of massive space stations, we could take it all a step further and develop even more marvelous constructions, like, for example, a Dyson sphere, a massive solar power plant that would encompass an entire star, and use it as a reactor of unprecedented size and power. And so, this idea, dubbed Galactic Wonders by our people, has been officially accepted as a new branch of the Expanse project. As Chancellor Tessa used to say, a wise nation builds its way out of its problems. Now, with knowledge to construct structures so massive, useful and prestigious, his words are more true than ever. So, despite chaos all around us, times are actually good for the Commonwealth. We continue our exploration, expansion and exploitation of the stars, and everywhere we look we see just how well our policies work. Our people are content, our worlds are prospering, and our borders are safer than ever. But perhaps most importantly, even those who once opposed us at every step are now becoming valued and respected citizens of our nation. The riots on former Yadran worlds are a thing of the past. While the kingdom crumbles just beyond our borders, Carthemas and Euvanux who live on our worlds prosper and thrive. And on June 4th, 2283, as Royal Blade Master of Falcabos presented a first cadre of officers he personally trained, he, and all of his people, were rewarded for their efforts by gaining full citizen rights. No longer are Carthemas, Yuri and Helvans excluded from our voting system. No longer are they looked upon as potential rebels and troublemakers. Over the past decades, we helped them rebuild their homes and improve their lives, and in return, they learned to trust us, and now stand side by side with other citizens of the Commonwealth, ready to prosper among the stars. But while we continue our expansion, far beyond our western border a single event has just happened, and very soon it's going to shake the Commonwealth to its very core. Captain, I'm telling you, we're too far into Imperial space. The only thing we're going to find here is trouble. We should get back. Negative, officer. With their fleet busy in the north, this is the best opportunity to learn something about them. We can't just let the Empire remain a mystery, not when they're clearly focused on conquering everyone around them. That's why we should... Wait, hold on. We have something on our sensors. It looks like a ship, but it's different than ones we picked up on our long-range scanners. I think it's a warship, but it doesn't seem to have all these jammers they use to mask their signatures. Exactly what I had in mind, officer. While Imperials and Dis slaughter each other in the north, they were probably forced to use less advanced craft to patrol their borders away from the front lines. That's our chance. Move in and get me a sensor lock on them. Understood, Captain, but assuming they're using the same weapons as other Imperial vessels, if we move in that close, we will be within range of their guns. They haven't reacted to our presence yet, which means our cloaking systems seem to be working as advertised. Keep emissions to minimum, and we should be alright. Aye aye. Here we go. There, sensor lock engaged. We have them, sir. Beginning detailed scan now. Wait. No way, sir, we're being hailed. By them. But they never... Damn it, patch it through, but keep that scan active at all costs.
Alien creatures, this is Imperial Navy. You have violated sovereign Imperial territory with your abominable presence, and you have also defiled this very ship with your filthy xenotechnology. Your presence here is an insult to my people, and so it is my duty, as protector of this system, to remove your corrupting influence from these stars. Prepare to be annihilated.
Sir, they're powering up their weapons. What the hell are you doing? I'm buying us time to scan them, so keep at it, officer. Apologies, Imperial, but I'm afraid there has been some mistake. According to rules of galactic law, this system actually belongs to Rexicodium Union, who are allied to us, the Fethgran Union. We have all the right to be here.
Your opinion does not matter, alien creature. Your primitive, pathetic laws do not matter. These stars and this entire galaxy belong to the Eternal Empire, and by defiling them with your schemes, you have signed your own death sentence.
I have them. I got access to one of their internal cameras. We could see how they look. Get it on screen now.
Your little security break means nothing. Know this, alien. The Empire shall not rest until all Xenos have been eliminated and the galaxy purified of their corruption. Only then our eternal vengeance will be complete. This audience is over. All stations, fire!
Horse, we lost them. Shit, we have incoming missiles. Evasive maneuvers, all stations, emergency positions. Give me full speed and get us out of here. The Directorate must see this data. Sir, enemy ship just powered up their engines. Holy shit, they're going twice as fast as we do. We won't be able to outrun them. Can we do an emergency jump? No, too many planets around, and we won't reach a safe spot before they catch up to us. Damn it. Alright, new plan. Turn off all weapons except PD guns and put all juice to the comms. We have to send this message back home no matter what. Aye, sir. Beginning transmission. Damn, they must be jamming us. I can't get past them, but I'm going to need time. You heard it, people. Burn full ahead and focus on shooting down these rockets. Almost there. Almost there. Oh shit, they have a railgun. All stations, brace for impact!